At my son's graduation, in front of his professors, colleagues, and nearly 200 guests, Marcus Webb smiled and introduced me as the housekeeper who raised him. Not his mother, the housekeeper. I was standing right beside him in a blue dress I had saved 3 months to buy, holding white roses because Marcus once told me they were his favorite. My name is Patricia. I had driven 2 hours to be there. I had sat through the whole ceremony with tears in my eyes, watching my son walk across that stage in a white coat I had spent half my life helping him reach. And then, when it was time to tell people who I was, he erased me with one sentence. "This is Patricia," he said, smiling at a senior physician. "She's the housekeeper who raised me." I waited for him to laugh. To say, "I'm joking. This is my mother." He didn't. Another colleague came over. "This is Patricia. She helped raise me." Another. "She used to work for our family." Each version was smooth. That day, and I made a decision that would take 6 months to execute and 30 seconds to deliver. The last thing I said to my son the day I delivered it was this: "You were ashamed to call me your mother." "No, Marcus, you don't get both. No one could believe a mother did this to her son." Let me tell you how we got there. Marcus was born on a Tuesday in February during the worst snowstorm our county had seen in 11 years. His father, Raymond, drove me to the hospital in a car with no heat and was gone by the time Marcus was 2. Not dead, just gone. The way some men leave. Quietly, completely, leaving behind a forwarding address that stopped working 6 months later and a child who asked for his daddy every night for a year before he slowly, painfully stopped. I did not fall apart. I could not afford to. I had a 2-year-old and a cleaning job and a landlord who did not accept grief as payment. So I worked. I cleaned offices 5 nights a week. I waitressed on weekends. When Marcus started school, I added a 3rd job doing laundry pickup and drop-off for a dry cleaner 2 blocks from our apartment. 3 jobs for 17 years. I want you to understand what 17 years of 3 jobs actually means. It means you see your child off to school on 3 hours of sleep and tell yourself the tiredness is temporary when you both know it is not. It means you miss the Christmas play and the science fair and the parent-teacher conference where his teacher said he was exceptional and you heard about it secondhand. It means you eat leftover restaurant food at midnight, standing over a kitchen sink because sitting down feels like a luxury you have not earned. It means that by the time Marcus graduated high school with grades good enough for pre-med, I owned nothing of value except the knowledge that I had given him every possible chance and the private certainty that he would not waste it. I never told him the cost. That was my first mistake. When you make sacrifice invisible, you give people permission to forget it exists. The 3rd job ended when Marcus was 14. That was the year I answered a private ad in the local paper. A woman named Eleanor Whitfield needed a live-in housekeeper 3 days a week. The pay was nearly double what I was making at the dry cleaner. I called the number that same evening. Eleanor Whitfield was 71 years old, recently widowed, and the sharpest person I have ever been in a room with. She had been a corporate attorney for 40 years. She had no children. She had a large Victorian house on Elmwood Drive, a progressive illness affecting her mobility that she refused to discuss, and an opinion about everything she delivered without apology or softening. She intimidated me entirely in the first 5 minutes. I took the job anyway. 3 days became 5. Not because she demanded it, but because she was declining and would not admit it, and I could not pretend I didn't see it. On her bad weeks, she could barely move from bedroom to kitchen. I cooked, helped her bathe, managed her medications, sat with her in the evenings when the house got too quiet and she got too still. She never asked me to do any of it. I simply did it because it needed doing. We did not become friends quickly. Eleanor did not warm easily. But over months and then years, something built between us that I have never found the right word for, deeper than employer and employee. The specific intimacy that develops between 2 people when one of them has seen the other at their most fragile and said nothing about it to anyone. She met Marcus when he was 15. He came with me one Saturday when school was out. Eleanor looked him up and down the way she looked at everything, completely, without sentiment, and said, "Your mother tells me you want to be a doctor." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" He thought about it for a real moment. Then he said, "Because my mom has spent her whole life taking care of other people, and nobody has ever really taken care of her. I want to understand how to fix people." Eleanor looked at him, then at me, then back at him. "You should make sure he gets there," she said to me, as if I needed the instruction. Marcus got there. Medical school, residency, fellowship. Each milestone arrived with the inevitability of something set in motion a long time ago and simply completing its arc. He graduated in the top 3% of his class. His professors used words like exceptional. He matched at one of the most competitive residency programs in the state. I drove to every ceremony, every pinning, every small milestone medical school offers as consolation for the years it takes. I sat in auditoriums in my best clothes and watched my son become the thing I had built toward for 17 years. We spoke every Sunday at 7, without fail. He said, "I love you" at the end of every call. He was entirely my son, and I believed, completely, foolishly, with the specific blindness of a woman who has loved something too long to see it clearly, that he was proud of me too. Eleanor's health declined sharply the year Marcus began his fellowship. I reduced everything else and was with her 5, sometimes 6 days a week. Her doctor visited regularly. Her lawyer, a quiet man named Mr. Gaines, came every few months for meetings I was not part of. One evening in October, Eleanor called me into the sitting room after dinner. She was in her chair by the window, looking out at the garden she could no longer tend. "Patricia, sit down." I sat. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting me because you redirect uncomfortable conversations, and I do not have the energy for it tonight." I nodded. "I have no family," she said. "I have colleagues and acquaintances and you. You are the only person in my life who has been genuinely present without wanting anything. You have given me 8 years of care, and you have done it with a dignity I admire more than I have ever said." She turned from the window and looked at me directly. "I have spoken with Mr. Gaines. My will has been updated. The house, the investments, the portfolio Richard and I built over 40 years. Everything goes to you, with the exception of 3 specific charitable bequests." She paused. "The total value is approximately $4.2 million. I stared at her. "I am not doing this out of charity," she said, before I could speak. "You have earned it. 8 years of your life. 8 years of your care. I want to make sure those years mean something beyond a salary." "Eleanor," I said, "I told you not to interrupt." Firm, but not unkind. "There is one other thing. I am establishing a research fellowship in my name. The Eleanor Whitfield Research Fellowship. It will be administered through a foundation and funded from a portion of the estate. Medical research. Competitive. Significant funding." She looked at me. "You will control it, Patricia. You will sit on the board that awards it. I want someone with sense making those decisions, not a committee of strangers who never knew me." I could not speak. "Go make me some tea," she said. "And do not mention any of this again until it is relevant." Eleanor died on a Thursday morning in March, 14 months later. I was holding her hand. I sat with her for a while before I called anyone. I talk to her the way I talk to people when I am not sure whether they can still hear me, but I am not willing to assume they cannot. I told her she had been the most formidable woman I had ever known. I told her the 8 years in that house had changed me in ways I was still discovering. I told her I would use what she had left me carefully and without waste, because I knew that was what she would require. Then I called Mr. Gaines. I did not tell Marcus about Eleanor's estate. I moved into the house on Elmwood Drive. I continued to dress the same way, drive the same car, shop at the same stores. I met with Mr. Gaines and a financial advisor named Sandra Okafor, and I learned everything there was to learn about what I now held and what it could do. I also took my seat on the board of the Eleanor Whitfield Foundation. We met quarterly. We reviewed applications. We awarded fellowships. The work was serious, and the decisions were careful, and I took them seriously in the way Eleanor had taught me to take things seriously, completely, without pretense, with full attention. I said nothing about any of it to Marcus, not because I was hiding it, because the timing had not yet come. Marcus's graduation was on a Saturday in June. I drove 2 hours. I wore the blue dress. I carried the white roses. I sat in that auditorium and watched my son walk across the stage, and I felt a pride so complete it was almost painful. At the reception afterward, Marcus moved through his colleagues with an ease I had watched him develop over years, and I stood beside him, feeling the quiet happiness of a woman whose work is complete. Then a senior physician approached, gray-haired, authoritative. He extended his hand to Marcus and said, "Webb, introduce me to your guest." And my son, my Marcus, the boy I had carried through 17 years of 3 job winners, turned to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and said, This is Patricia. She's the housekeeper who raised me, not my mother, the housekeeper. I watched it happen the way you watch something you cannot believe is occurring, even while it occurs. The physician smiled politely and moved on. Another colleague arrived, then another. And each time, some version of the same introduction. This is Patricia. Sometimes with the housekeeper line. Sometimes just my name, delivered with the casual detachment you use for people who are present but peripheral. Not once did he say, "This is my mother." Not once. I held my roses. I smiled. I said lovely to meet you to every single one of them. On the drive home, I did not cry. I thought about Eleanor. I thought about what she had said that October evening. You have done it with a dignity I admire. Dignity. I thought about what dignity required of me now. By the time I pulled into the driveway on Elmwood Drive, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I did not yet know how, but I knew what, and I was prepared to wait. The call from Mr. Gaines came on a Wednesday morning, 4 months after the graduation. "Patricia," he said, "I thought you should know. We've received an application for the Whitfield Fellowship from a Dr. Marcus Webb, Mercy General, cardiology research." I set down my coffee. "He's a strong candidate," Mr. Gaines continued carefully. "Top of the pool, honestly. The research proposal is excellent." I was quiet for a moment. "Does he know who funds it?" I asked. "The Eleanor Whitfield Foundation, yes. But the board composition is not public. He would have no reason to know you're involved." I thought about that. The white roses, the blue dress, the housekeeper who raised me. "Mr. Gaines," I said. "When is the final presentation panel?" 6 weeks. "I would like to attend." A pause. "Of course. You are a board member. It's well within your rights." "I know," I said. "I just want to make sure my attendance is not announced to the candidates in advance." Another pause. Longer. "I understand," he said quietly. "I want to tell you about those 6 weeks. I did not spend them plotting in the dramatic sense. I am not a dramatic woman. I spent them the way I spend most things, quietly, attending to the ordinary business of days while something larger was being decided underneath. I watered Eleanor's garden. I met with Sandra about the foundation's investments. I took my morning walks on Elmwood Drive in the early light, past the houses of people who had no idea who I was or what I was carrying. Marcus called every Sunday at 7. We talked about his research, his patients, the fellowship application. He mentioned it in the 3rd week with a careful casualness that did not fool me for a moment. "I applied for a research fellowship," he said. "The Whitfield. It's significant, career-changing. Honestly, if I get it." "What is the research?" I asked. He told me. "Cardiology. A specific area of heart failure treatment that had shown promising early results and needed funding for the next phase." He explained it the way he always explained his work to me, carefully, translating the technical into the understandable, never assuming I could not follow. He had always done that. Even at the worst of things, he had always spoken to me as someone worth explaining things to. I filed that away. "It sounds important," I said. "It is," he said. "Mom, if I get this, it changes everything. My whole research trajectory. 5 years of work validated. I hope you get it," I said. And I meant it. I meant it with one part of me that was entirely his mother. The other part had already decided. The panel was held on a Thursday morning in November at the foundation offices downtown. I arrived early. I took my seat at the board table. 5 of us, Mr. Gaines at the head, 3 other board members, and me at the far end with a glass of water and a copy of each finalist's research proposal. Marcus was the 3rd presenter of the morning. I heard the door open behind me. I heard the sound of someone entering, setting down papers, preparing. I did not turn around. Then Mr. Gaines said, "Our next presenter is Dr. Marcus Webb from Mercy General. Dr. Webb, please go ahead and..." He stopped. Not Mr. Gaines. Marcus. I turned then, slowly, the way you turn when you already know what you are going to see. Marcus was standing at the front of the room with his presentation materials in his hand and his face the color of something that has had all its blood removed. He was looking at me. I looked back at him. I did not smile. I did not frown. I simply looked at him with the full, clear attention of a woman who has been in this room for a very long time. "Dr. Webb," Mr. Gaines said again, gently, "whenever you are ready." What Marcus did next told me something I needed to know. He did not make an excuse. He did not ask for a recess. He did not look at me again for longer than a second before he squared his shoulders and turned to face the full board. He presented. For 22 minutes, Dr. Marcus Webb presented his research with a precision and a passion that was, I will tell you honestly, extraordinary. His voice was steady. His argument was clear. His data was compelling. He answered every question the board asked with intelligence and without deflection. He was good. He was genuinely, undeniably good. And for 22 minutes, I sat at the end of that table and watched my son perform at the highest level of himself, and I thought, I made that. 3 jobs and 17 years and cold pasta at midnight, and I made that. And he called me the housekeeper. When the presentation was finished, Marcus gathered his materials. The board members made their notes. Mr. Gaines thanked him. Marcus turned to leave. Then he stopped. He turned back. He looked directly at me. Thank you for your time, he said to the board. Then, only to me, Mom, just the word, quiet, like a door he wasn't sure he was allowed to open. I nodded once, and he left. The board deliberated for 40 minutes. Marcus's application was, as Mr. Gaines had said, the strongest in the pool. 2 of the other board members said so directly. The research was solid. The need was clear. The candidate was qualified beyond question. When it came to my vote, I said, I am going to recuse myself from this specific application. There is a conflict of interest I should have disclosed earlier. I know the candidate. Mr. Gaines looked at me. Of course, that's appropriate. The remaining 4 voted, 3-1 in Marcus's favor. Then I said, I need to speak to Dr. Webb before the decision is communicated, privately. If I may use the small conference room. Marcus was waiting in the hallway. He had not left. I had not expected him to. He followed me into the conference room without speaking. I closed the door. We stood on opposite sides of a small table and looked at each other. He spoke first. Mom, I didn't know. I had no idea you were. I didn't know the foundation. I know you didn't, I said. I wouldn't have. If I had known, I wouldn't have. You would have what, Marcus? I asked, not unkindly. Genuinely. He stopped. You would have been more careful with me if you had known what I controlled, I said. Is that what you were going to say? The silence in that room was very specific. The silence of a true thing being heard. Mom, at your graduation, I said, you introduced me to Dr. Holt, your department head. You told him I was the housekeeper who raised you. I kept my voice even. Was that because you didn't know I controlled a fellowship that could define your research career? Or was it because in that moment I was just your mother in a blue dress and that was not enough for the room you were in? He had no answer. Because there was only one honest answer and we both knew what it was. I worked 3 jobs for 17 years, I said. I ate cold food standing over a sink so there would be money for your textbooks. I sat in parking lots outside ceremony venues because I had arrived too early and the doors weren't open yet and I was too excited to wait in the car. I paused. I gave 8 years of my life to a woman I was not related to because she needed someone and I was there. And when she died, she left me everything she had because she said I had done it with dignity. He was crying. Standing at that table with his research proposal in his hand, Dr. Marcus Webb was crying. The board has voted to award you the fellowship, I said. His face shifted, relief beginning. I am withdrawing the foundation's funding from your application. The relief stopped. Mom. The other 3 board members have voted in your favor, and their vote stands in terms of selection. But the foundation's contribution, the Eleanor Whitfield Foundation, my foundation, is being redirected to the second-ranked applicant. He stared at me. Mom. Please, this fellowship. You don't understand what this means for my research. 5 years of work. My entire next phase depends on. I understand exactly what it means, I said. I read your proposal 3 times. Then you know I need this. Mom, please. I am asking you. I know you're asking me. I looked at him steadily. You are asking me with the same mouth that told Dr. Richard Holt I was the housekeeper who raised you. You are standing in front of me begging for something from the woman you were ashamed to claim 6 months ago. I was wrong, he said. Desperate now. Mom, I know I was wrong. I have thought about nothing else since that day. I was ashamed and I was wrong and I am so sorry. I believe you, I said. He exhaled. But Marcus, I waited until he looked at me. An apology is what you give someone after you have hurt them. It is not a transaction. It does not purchase things. You do not get to be sorry and also get the fellowship. Those are two separate reckonings, and they do not cancel each other out. Mom, please. You were ashamed to call me your mother, I said, but you were not too ashamed to let me fund your future. I let that land. No, Marcus. You don't get both. The room was so quiet I could hear the traffic outside. Marcus sat down. Not in the controlled way of a man choosing to sit. In the way of a man whose legs have stopped cooperating. He sat with his proposal on the table in front of him, and his hands flat on either side of it, and his head dropped, and he did not speak for a long time. When he finally looked up, his face was something I had not seen since he was a small boy who had done something he could not undo and knew it. What do I do? He said. Not about the fellowship. About everything. I sat down across from him. For the first time since I had entered that conference room, I sat down. You start by understanding something, I said. I am not doing this to punish you. Punishment is what you do when you want someone to hurt. This is not that. This is consequence. There is a difference. He nodded. Consequence means that what you do has a real and proportionate result in the real world. You made me invisible in a room full of your colleagues. The consequence is that you discovered I was the most significant person in that room, not because I needed to prove that, but because it was true, and truth has a way of surfacing. I know, he whispered. The fellowship funding will go to Dr. Anita Reeves, I said. Her research is strong, and she deserves it. But more than that, she reminds me of myself at her age. 3 jobs. Nobody helping. Everything earned. I paused. I will not apologize for choosing her. He shook his head. Don't apologize. Don't. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus said something I did not expect. Tell me about Eleanor. I looked at him. You've never told me the full story, he said. I knew you worked for her. I knew she died. But I never asked properly. I never asked what she meant to you. I looked at my son sitting across from me, hollowed out and honest for the first time in longer than I could measure. And I told him. I told him about the first day, about the 3 days that became 5, about the bad weeks and the medication management and the evenings sitting in the quiet of a large house with a woman who was frightened and would rather have died than admitted it. I told him about the October evening and the sitting room and the way Eleanor had delivered the news of the inheritance with the same tone she used to discuss case strategy. I told him about the journal, about the page at the end. She wrote that you had taught her more about how to live in 8 years than she had learned in 71, I said. Marcus pressed his hand flat against the table. She also said she hoped you would teach your son. He closed his eyes. I haven't, he said. I have been a terrible student. You have been a frightened one, I said. There's a difference. Terrible students don't care. Frightened ones do care. They just let the fear make the wrong decision. He looked at me. What was I frightened of? Of what it meant that your mother was a housekeeper, I said simply. Of what your colleagues would think. Of the gap between where you came from and where you had arrived. A lot of people who climb a long way get frightened at the top that someone will see how far down they started. That's not an excuse, he said. No, I agreed. It isn't. But it's a reason. And reasons are useful because they tell you what to fix. How do I fix this? I thought about Eleanor's garden. About the winter beds, bare and resting. You cannot fix the graduation, I said. It happened. It is part of the record of who you were on that day. But you can decide what every day after looks like. Tell me what that means specifically. It means that the next time someone asks who I am, you say, this is my mother, Patricia Webb. She worked 3 jobs to put me through medical school, and she is the most important person in this room. I looked at him steadily, every time, without exception, in front of anyone. He nodded. It means that you call me on Sundays, not because it is a habit, but because you want to talk to me. I do want to. Then mean it when you do it. I paused. It means that someday, when you have children, you tell them the true story of where they came from. Not a polished version, the real one. The cold pasta and the 3 jobs and the Christmas I couldn't afford. Because those are not things to be ashamed of. They are the foundation of everything you are. Marcus was crying again. Not the broken crying of before. Something quieter, deeper. There is a scholarship, I said, through the foundation, for medical students from low-income backgrounds. I want you to mentor them. I want you to sit across from them and tell them the true story and tell them it can be done. That is the repayment I am asking for, not for the fellowship, for everything. He looked up. I'll do it. I know you will, I said. Because you are still the boy who told a 71-year-old attorney that you wanted to become a doctor because your mother deserved to be taken care of. He broke fully then. His hands came up over his face, and he cried in the unguarded way of someone who has finally put down something very heavy. I let him. I sat across from my son in that small conference room, and I let him feel the full weight of what he had done and what it had cost and what it had revealed about him, and I did not rush any of it. Because this was the lesson, not the withdrawal of the funding. That was just the door. This room, this reckoning, this specific and necessary truth. This was the lesson. When we walked out of that conference room, the hallway was empty. We stood for a moment in the quiet of the corridor. Marcus turned to me. Mom. He said it the way you say something you have been taking for granted and have only now heard clearly. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it. I know what you said about apologies. But I need you to know that I am sorry in a way I have never been sorry for anything in my life. I know, I said. Can we? Is there a way back from this? I thought about Eleanor, about what she had said about inheritance, about what she had taught me, about the difference between what runs out and what lasts. There is always a way forward, I said. Back is a direction I don't travel. But forward, yes. If you mean it, I mean it. Then call me Sunday, I said, 7 o'clock. And mean that too. He nodded. And then he did something he had not done since he was a teenager standing in Eleanor's living room. He hugged me. Not the polite embrace of a son performing filial duty. The real thing. Both arms. The kind that says I see you without any words at all. I held my son in the hallway of a foundation building that bore the name of a woman who had changed both our lives, and I felt the specific, complicated ache of loving someone who has hurt you and is trying to do better. And I thought about how that is perhaps the truest definition of family that exists. Not the people who never wound you. The people who wound you and then show up and try to heal it. Marcus called Sunday at 7. He has called every Sunday at 7 since. But something is different now. I noticed it the first week, and it has only become clearer since. The calls are not the same calls they were before. They are not the performed check-ins of a dutiful son with a busy week. They are conversations, the real kind. The kind where both people are present. He asks about Eleanor's garden. He asks what I am reading. He asks about the foundation work, about the scholarship candidates, about the board meetings. He told Diane the full story. She called me separately to tell me she had not known any of it. The 3 jobs, the years, any of it. And she cried on the phone and asked me if she could come see me. She came the following weekend and sat in Eleanor's kitchen, and I fed her, and we talked for 3 hours, and she is not the woman I had originally assessed. She is a woman who married a man she thought she knew and is discovering his full dimensions at the same time he is discovering them himself. That is its own kind of difficult. I told her to be patient with him, not to excuse him, but to be patient. She said she would. 3 months after the conference room, the scholarship held its first mentorship lunch. 4 medical students, all from backgrounds not unlike the one I had come from. Working nights, eating badly, carrying the specific exhaustion of people who are trying to build something in conditions that were not designed to support them. Marcus sat across from them. I sat at the far end of the table and watched. He did not give them a polished speech. He did not give them the curated version of his life. He told them the true story. The woman who worked 3 jobs, the Christmas he tries not to remember, the apartment that was too small, and the textbooks that cost too much, and the mother who never once let him see her afraid. He told them about the graduation. He told them what he had said and what it had cost him and what it had taught him. One of the students, a young woman named Deshawn, 22 years old, pre-med, working nights at a hospital laundry exactly the way I had worked nights at a dry cleaner 30 years before, looked at Marcus and said, "Why are you telling us this? The bad part." Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Because my mother taught me that the bad part is the most important part to tell. The good part people can see. The bad part is where the truth lives. And you deserve the truth." I looked at my hands on the table in front of me. Eleanor's gold earrings were warm against my face. I did not say anything. I did not need to. I am 63 years old. I have a foundation that bears the name of the most formidable woman I ever knew. I have a scholarship that is putting people like me into rooms like the ones I used to clean. I have a son who is learning, imperfectly and genuinely, to be worthy of the woman who raised him. I live in Eleanor's house on Elmwood Drive. The garden is coming back. I have planted things that take time to bear fruit, and I am not in a hurry. In the front hallway where Eleanor kept a landscape painting, I have hung a photograph. Me and Marcus at his white coat ceremony. The first one. Before the graduation. Before the housekeeper. Before all of it. He is 23 and I am 47, and we are both squinting into the sun and laughing. I look tired in that photograph. The clothes are thrift store. My hands are the hands of a woman who has been cleaning things for 20 years. But I am laughing, and Marcus is holding my hand. I hung it there because it is the truest picture I have of us. Before we lost the thread and after we found it again. Every morning when I leave, I see it. Every evening when I come home, I see it. It reminds me of two things: how much it cost, and that it was worth it. Before I go tonight, I want to say something to you. Not to all of you. To the specific one of you who needed this story tonight. The one who is working 2 jobs or 3. The one who is eating whatever is left over so there will be enough for the people they love. The one who went to a graduation or a wedding or a dinner and was introduced as something less than what they are. You are not less than what they are. You are the reason they are anything at all. And I want you to know, I need you to know, that your sacrifices are not invisible even when they are treated that way. Even when the person who benefited from them most is the one looking through you. The truth has a way of surfacing. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it surfaces in a small conference room when a man walks in to give the most important presentation of his career and finds his mother already seated at the table. But it surfaces. And when it does, when you are sitting at that table and they are standing at the door and the whole room has shifted on its axis, I want you to be ready. Not with anger, not with a speech, just with the truth, spoken quietly, with dignity, the way Eleanor taught me. The way I am passing it on to you. My name is Patricia. I am not the housekeeper. I never was. If this story found you when you needed it, leave me 1 word in the comments. Just 1. I read every single one. Subscribe for more stories. There are many more waiting for you. Until next time, with all my love, Mother Teresa.